So, Zack Snyder's Justice League just came out, and I had to get a free trial on Now TV to fucking watch it, but I've watched it. And just to preface this a little bit, I didn't really like Man of Steel or Batman vs Superman. I thought the first one was pretty boring with some good parts, and the second one was just had some big ups and some big downs. I'd probably like them a lot more now that this movie's happened, because this movie was really good. So I guess I'll talk about it in a non-spoilery way first. I watched the original. It was garbage. Just, there's a good action scene here or there, but everything that was good in the movie was from Zack Snyder. So it's in this movie anyway. So there's really no reason to ever watch the original ever again after this movie's come out. This movie is insanely dense. Every character gets their time to shine, which is not what you would expect. You would expect this person to overshadow this person. I guess the only person who doesn't is perhaps Superman, but it makes sense considering what's going on. And he still has a huge presence in the movie anyway. A lot of minor characters that were cut out were put back in for this, and a lot of them just have one or two scenes, but it's still pretty nice to see them, even though, well, we'll get into that later. But to cap off the non-spoiler section, I'll just talk about each major character in the movie and how they were represented. I'll start with Superman because he's the easiest. Like I said, he has a lot of presence in the movie, and he's not in it as much as the others. When he is there, though, you really get a sense of how overwhelmingly strong he is. He is a little cocky at points. Well, at points, only one point in the movie, which is doesn't seem very Superman, but considering what was going on, I can kind of get it. He can kind of come across as more of a bully than a typical, his Boy Scout persona, but it might just be Snyder's interpretation of him and not really, contradicting what came before. I haven't seen the two previous movies in a while. Batman was at the same time really cool, but I could really feel the writer trying to give him something to do. It was also kind of funny how he's behind everyone else because he doesn't have any way to get there as fast as they do. He doesn't have super speed or can fly or can go fast in any capacity, so he's behind them in two different scenes. Wonder Woman cuts through the parademons like they're nothing, and there's this one part where Batman has to fight one for a minute to be able to beat it. He just seems like he could be doing more, even though they really try and make him part of the team. Wonder Woman is really good when her mouth's closed. When she starts speaking, you really feel how she's not very good of an actress. Or I don't know, her accent's making her sound terrible. I don't know what to think, because every time she opens her mouth, I'm like, this is almost taking me out of the scene. If my head wasn't telling me, oh, it's Wonder Woman, she has an accent. But it's just Kal-El, no. What is that delivery? What is going on? But in action scenes, she's just insanely strong and, cool and all that. I would honestly say she's the weakest character in the movie because of the delivery of her lines and the fact that she doesn't really have an arc or anything, nothing substantial about her. And that's fine, I guess. Aquaman I actually really liked in this movie. I don't think it's to do with the fact that I really liked the Aquaman movie itself, but just the way he acts in this movie where he's not kind of on board, he's just kind of a step behind everyone else in terms of being a hero, but he still has a lot of depth to him that gets revealed over some smaller conversations throughout the movie. But yeah, he was also shown to be really strong. He took less of a role in fights than Wonder Woman did, but considering how little Wonder Woman had to do otherwise, I can get it. And Aquaman had a movie coming up, so I can see why he's on the back foot, on the back burner, so to speak. But he was still probably my favorite character in this movie. If not him, then probably Flash. Now, I won't lie, I probably like Flash because, time travel and speed and all that. But his awkwardness and jokes in this movie felt a lot more like a defense mechanism than it did than the movie trying to be funny. Because there's a scene very early on where he's clearly trying to joke around, but the person just isn't having it because he's not funny. He's just saying it to try and be funny, and you kind of get that. So I feel like there might be jokes a bit later, not that far later, but like in the first hour of the movie where you're like, that wasn't funny, but then you're like, well, the movie isn't trying to be funny, it's trying to show that the Flash is trying to be funny himself, and he's failing because he's not confident in himself, he's not this or that, and it might just be me explaining away some of the bad jokes, but it seems like after the first hour, he got a lot more confident, a lot funnier lines. The two scenes with his dad also made me like tear up. It's probably the only things that did in the movie, but both of the scenes I was like, oh, this is so, I don't know. Maybe it's because I watched the Flash TV show for a bit. I don't think it is. I think it was just like, I don't know. Probably is because it gave me some context to why he's in jail and what's going on and why it's happening. But that was kind of emotional. A little bit. He also has like two of the best scenes in the movie. Two best action scenes. I guess they're action scenes. But he had a lot more to do in this movie, especially in the climax. And I mean, I guess I could say that in the original movie, the best scene is still there when Superman turns around. But on to Cyborg. I don't even remember Cyborg in the original, really. And to be honest, I don't think Cyborg should be on the team because he's Cyborg. He's part of the Team Titans, or the Titans later. He's just there to be the computer. He is in the comics. Like, Jeff Johns put him on because he really likes him. And then after this, Justice League fiasco, he put him on Doom Patrol because he just likes him that much. But I don't like him that much. And I don't like him on Justice League. Like, he's probably my least favorite Teen Titan of, like, the base ones, including Wonder Girl. He's just not interesting. Like, he's interesting, but he's not that interesting. But in this movie, he was used really well. It was basically his origin story, and there's just a lot going on. People call him the heart of the movie, but I can see that, but it didn't really, like, he wasn't my favorite character, and it didn't make me feel the most emotional. I just said that was Flash, so, I'm glad he was there. I really liked the scenes with his dad, especially the, like, more quieter ones, where it's just, like the part where he's just like, you're my father. Like, that was really good, even though it was so simple and, like, a 10-second scene. Steppenwolf was improved greatly. He was, he's a villain. He wasn't super interesting, but there's, like, this one aspect of him where you're like, oh, I get it. This really elevates the character, and it really makes me feel for him a little bit, but not really. Feel for him in a sense that he is not a real person, because if he was real, you'd be like, fuck you, you're a monster. But in the context of the movie and seeing him like, oh, with his puppy dog eyes, just like, oh, poor guy, kind of. And finally, Darkseid had a real presence, mainly because of music, I would say, because he's only really in 2 scenes, and there is one scene where they're looking at a mural, but I feel like some of it has to do with, because I know who Darkseid is, obviously, but I think he was used to great effect, especially when you see him in the climax of the movie. He is around, so to speak. So to conclude the non-spoiler part, the movie being 4 hours long, didn't care at all, really. Although the first hour of the movie, there was definitely some slow-mo in that, in the Wonder Woman bank scene that could be taken out, especially when she's throwing the bomb. Like, you don't need that slow-mo. And there was the Icelandic girls, or whatever they are, singing. You could have cut that down. Stuff like that. Like, it didn't really need to be there. And I don't know. And, oh, this is another thing. The fucking Amazon, like, that sucks. Like, that just stop doing that. Like, those happen, like, within a minute of each other in some scenes. And it's used for both the Amazons and Wonder Woman. It's like, why are you doing that? Just have it be one. And then have the other one, probably the Amazons, and then have Wonder Woman have her own theme, which she does have in the movie, but it's like, it starts with that, and it's like, completely unnecessary. Don't do that. There's also the one part where Aquaman's walking off the dock, and a song that really doesn't suit it starts playing, but whatever. Let's get on to the spoiler part and talk about all the side characters that show up in this movie. Lois and Clark's mom were pretty good, but I didn't really feel anything special towards them. They were just kind of like a moving part. I was glad to see them, and the scenes that showed their grief, were good. And they were good. The whole, like, implied pregnancy was kind of like, I don't know, it just kind of felt weird, because it's kind of a weird thing for the projected next movie that probably won't happen, but the scene where they reunite is pretty good. Decide, I've forgotten, but he's really good. I'm just glad that he showed up, because I don't even know who this guy is, to be honest. I haven't seen him in any of the comics I've read, or in Injustice, or that I played, or the movies, obviously. But he really, like, him being there instead of Darkseid made a lot of sense, and it really built up Darkseid. And seeing how he interacted with Steppenwolf was pretty good. Pretty interesting, I should say. And I should also say I did see him in Lego DC Supervillains. That's why I know he exists. But moving on to Martian Manhunter, it was pretty cool to see him, but the first scene where you saw him, I don't know, it just didn't feel like that needed to be there. And he turned into the Swanwick, or whoever that was, just to tell the audience that he was that character. I feel like you could have done that at the end when Bruce meets him. It might be because that was supposed to be in the original movie, and the scene at the end was, recorded for this Snyder Cut, but I don't know, it just felt a little bit weird that he turned into Swanwick and was like, oh, Lois, you gotta go see Superman or whatever. But it was interesting to see him. I don't know anything about Martian Manhunter, really, other than he's telepathic, obviously, and a Martian and all that. Iris shows up for, like, one scene. She was race swapped, which I'm never a fan of, because it's just kind of pandering. It's just it doesn't super matter for Iris in particular. And it's the same for the Atom, who also shows up, not as the Atom, obviously, just as himself before he becomes the Atom, who's also race swapped. I just hate that stuff. I just hate it. I want the character to be perfectly how he is, and they fuck it up in the comics as well. They made Alan Scott gay. I'm like, he has 2 kids. Like, why'd you do that after 60 years? But whatever. It doesn't matter. It's not like Barbara Gordon or something where it's like, oh, she's black now, so her ginger hair's gone, and it just completely ruins it's basically like taking away the costume, but it's not a big deal in that case. Commissioner Gordon shows up, and he's, J.K. Simmons. He's pretty good for that one scene. Mira shows up. She has like a British accent and a completely different wardrobe, different look. I mean, she did anyway in the original, but she was also pretty cool here because she sucked the water and blood out of Steppenwolf's face, which was pretty metal. So I like that, and she shows up in the epilogue. And I don't know, I like Mira, so that was pretty cool. Volko is also there. And it was nice to see him set up Aquaman's character and set up the Aquaman movie. Lex was there for like one scene in the epilogue, doesn't really matter, but I like him bald. I don't know what I would think of Jesse Eisenberg, in regular circumstances in a movie. Deathstroke shows up in the epilogue. He's also in the Nightmare with Mira and all that. And that was pretty cool. And it was a good juxtaposition from, oh, I want to kill Batman, to I'm working with Batman. That was pretty interesting. I guess I should mention the Amazons. They were much stronger in this, and their scene with Steppenwolf was really good. Cyborg's mom was pretty cool, and you get what she's about in like the one scene, 2 scenes she was in before she dies. And Silas was also really well realized, and I wouldn't say it was like I said, it wasn't that emotional for me when he died, but like I get why it was emotional for him, for Cyborg. And then the Joker at the end of the movie, he was a lot better than he was in Suicide Squad, and I really enjoyed his performance here. So just going over the movie a little bit more of a play-by-play. The first hour was pretty slow. The Amazon conflict with Steppenwolf was slow to start, but when it got to the chase, I really liked that. Also, I just realised I forgot Alfred. Alfred's really good in this. He's pretty funny. Just saying. I mean, he's Alfred, so... anyway, I liked all the Star Lab stuff, all the setting up of the parademons, Steppenwolf going to the toxic Russian place, and there's no family there, thank Christ. I thought the Wonder Woman, like, fire arrow going to the mural was kind of slow, but the Darkseid part at the end was really good. There was also her exposition of the old fight with Darkseid where he lost, which is kind of crazy, but obviously he's going to be a lot stronger now. And the fact that he didn't know where the world was later was kind of weird, but I kind of get it. They barely got out of there, so I understand why. But that scene was really cool to see Zeus and Ares and that Green Lantern and everyone working together. It and seeing what it took to stop him back then when he was weaker. Flash's introductory scene with Iris in the car was pretty... It looked good, but like that car crash was completely manufactured, and it takes a bit away from the car crash right after with Cyborg, but it was still pretty good. That whole flashback with Cyborg, I think, was done really well, and the whole like seeing the mom and giving her the money and the prize money, so quote unquote prize money, that really showed who he was and who he wanted to be. We really got a sense of his powers from the recording, and the fact that he fixed it later to listen to the second half at the end of the movie, that was pretty satisfying. I don't know why they were walking up the stairs at that one part. You should know if you saw it. Before they crossed the bridge, that was just weird. Like, why are they doing that? I guess for Batman's sake. Even then he has a grappling hook, so what's going on? I also really liked how everyone had something to do. Cyborg probably had the least, but he started off, shooting the guy, saving his dad. He helps the Flash with the debris, where Wonder Woman kind of takes on Steppenwolf and Batman takes on the rest of them. It showed how like messy they were at the beginning, and Aquaman wasn't even there until the end of that scene. It was kind of weird how the Flash put the Wonder Woman's sword back in her hand and then just like got hurt for it, but I guess that's just to show that he's just screwing around and he's being too clumsy and he's just not experienced yet, even though it implies that he's fought Grodd, and in Suicide Squad it shows that he's put away Boomerang, so it's kind of weird. But the scene where they show Superman up on the hologram, that was really cool. And the whole setup for that scene where it's like the camera keeps spinning around and around, and they're talking about the box and what the box can do and the smoke. And the dialogue in this movie is both really good but also kind of on the nose at some points, but not like in a particularly bad way. It's just kind of like, oh, I don't care how many demons he's fought and how many hells, and I'm like, that's cool, but it's also like kind of cheesy. Also the lines where Wonder Woman is like, she talks to the little girl and she's like, the little girl is like, can I be like you someday? And obviously she can't, because Wonder Woman is an Amazon, but Wonder Woman's like, oh, of course you can be whatever you want to be. And that's just like kind of weird. There's also this one part where Steppenwolf is like, I've got this one, and Wonder Woman's like, no one owns me. And it's like, shut up, like, what do you want about? You obviously know what he means, like, what's wrong with you? So just some bad lines from Wonder Woman, unsurprisingly. It differs depending on the person. Like, Wonder Woman just has some bad lines, Batman just has some cheesy lines, Superman's are a little out of character, whereas the other three are pretty spot on and pretty great. The scene where Cyborg has that vision was pretty interesting, especially considering what happens at the epilogue, and the whole like, no, go? That was pretty funny. The whole Superman turning around when Flash is in super speed is still probably the best part of the movie, if not the final Flash sequence, because that's just so cool when he's turning around and the Flash is just like, oh, the whole Superman fight is really good, and it's extended in this version. So I really like that. Although I do think it's weird, Batman just shows up with like basically no plan. I know that, they weren't expecting this, but they probably should have expected it a little bit considering what happened to Victor. Cyborg, that is. But then finally, there's the assault on Steppenwolf's base. Batman goes in, does something, probably the most he does in the entire movie, which is cool. Everyone shows up, destroys a bunch of buildings, a bunch of parademons. It's really awesome. They go inside. Aquaman and Wonder Woman basically fight Steppenwolf while Cyborg tries to get a hold of the box. The Flash has to he has to orbit the area, build up enough speed, and Batman just has to like basically try and protect him, which he doesn't. But the Steppenwolf fight is pretty cool. I like to seeing Aquaman doing a lot in this scene, and I like how it was such a fight for Cyborg to get to the box. Superman then shows up and just completely wrecks him. Just completely like keeps punching him and beating him and lasering him and just gets rid of his axe like it's nothing. And it's like, it's really awesome, but it's like, he's kind of a bully here. It's kind of weird. I don't know, it just wasn't what I was expecting. I don't really have a problem with it. Like, he shows up and he's like, not impressed. I'm like, is that really Superman? I mean, it was really cool, but like, I don't know. I'll have to think on it. The Flash gets shot when Cyborg is finally ready, and he's like, hiding his wound, and he's like really trying to get back into gear. And there's a lot of stuff like that in this movie. Like there's the part where Flash is like to Aquaman, he's like, I thought you didn't care, and Aquaman's like, I never said that. And that was really, I love that. That's probably like one of my favorite parts. There's also like when they're talking about digging up the grave slowly because they don't want to disrespect Superman, and some of the jokes there, and Aquaman and Wonder Woman bonding over the fact that they're enemies, their people are enemies. A lot of small stuff like that which really elevates this movie. So the portal opens up, Darkseid's there, the box synchronizes, which is the whole thing I didn't mention, but who cares, it's exposition. And then they lose, and the Flash is able to reverse time just barely because of something that was established earlier when they activated the box in the first place. And if Superman turning around isn't the best scene, this is the best scene. Like, this is so cool seeing everything reverse, and like just the effect when it first happens and he puts his hand out, that is so fucking good. I can't believe this wasn't in the movie, and he had that stupid bullshit otherwise with the fucking family. Like, that was like, this was amazing. This is the best scene in the movie. So they stop the boxes, they kill Steppenwolf, chop off his head. Darkseid doesn't give a fuck. Granny Goodness is also there, I forgot to mention, but like, she's just in the background. Then they're like, oh, we're gonna go invade the old-fashioned way. That's essentially where the movie ends, after some epilogue stuff I kind of mentioned with the recorder and Flash shooting his dad and all that kind of stuff. And then there's like the post-credit type epilogues. There's the one with Lex and Deathstroke, which is cool. And then there's one before that where Lex, quote-unquote, breaks out of prison. And then there's one after that with the Nightmare, which is really cool and really sets up how it's kind of injustice-y. And, you know, Joker's there, and you see the Flash from Batman v Superman that came back in time and all that kind of stuff. And then finally the Martian Manhunter one. And that's it. So there's like 25 minutes of epilogue, but it's just like, you know, it's not part of the movie really. But all of it overall, it's just 4 hours of super dense, super good, everything. Good action, good plot. Obviously there are missteps here or there where it's kind of like, this is some weird CG. Gal Gadot can't speak, you know, stuff like that. But overall, this is definitely like an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. Overall, with everything in mind, all the cool stuff in it, all the references, everything that I know as like a DC fan from the comics, from the games, from this, from that, from the other movies, you know, I'm really happy that this movie is here. And I really hope that it can continue in some fashion, whether it's a full-on live-action thing, whether it's a HBO series, whether it's a cartoon, you know, movie or animated. Even though these interpretations of the characters really aren't quite correct for me. Barry doesn't even have the right hair color. Like, he could have just dyed his hair. Like, what's going on with that? Batman's also a killer, obviously, you know, stuff like that. But overall, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. And I wish Zack and his wife the best.